I'm a man who follows many fandoms, but there's two that have always held a very special place in my heart. The first one, obviously, is Pokémon, but the second is... So you can imagine how ecstatic I was to find out that Ben 10 had won our Pokémon Patreon poll.
Hooray!
Meaning that I would get to make a video turning Ben 10 aliens into Pokémon.
Help me!
And that's especially interesting because Ben 10 is kind of the whole reason that I'm here. You see, when I was younger, I remember watching Ben 10. The show had first come out, and I was there for the air date of the first episode.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
And it was awesome. It was great. And I decided to start drawing Ben 10 art. I drew Pokemon and Spider-Man and superhero and Ben 10 art all the time. But this was the first time that I decided, what if I post this somewhere? I want to show people. So I did. I posted it on DeviantArt and met other really interesting people and found I really like sharing my art with people. And that expanded into my other love, which was Pokemon. And then I made a video. And then I made another video, and another, and you guys seem to really enjoy them. And so I kept doing them. And that really brings us full circle. Started out with Ben 10, which led into Pokemon, which led into videos, which led into today. Drawing Ben 10 aliens as Pokemon. So let's get started. Hi, I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at turning Ben 10 aliens into Pokemon, so don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and let's hop into it. You're settling down after another hard day of Pokemon catching. When you come across something, a Pokeball? Not an entirely uncommon sight, but this one is very uncommon. It has markings on it that you haven't seen in any other Pokeball before, and it feels almost alien in construction. After a moment's thought, you realize there's a Pokemon inside, or at the very least, something very similar to a Pokemon. When your curiosity gets the better of you, you decide to let it free. For this first design, I knew I wanted to go small, and for the original 10 aliens of the Ben 10 series, there was no smaller than gray matter. Over time, we got a lot of different aliens, and some that were actually very much littler than this guy. I'm thinking specifically of Nanomech, but in the beginning, this was our freaky little frogman. Emphasis on the little. Also emphasis on the frog. Heck with it, emphasis on the freaky too. He was the brains of the operation behind all of Ben's aliens, as well as his species having a deep and connected history with the entirety of the franchise, being the same race that created the Omnitrix in the first place. So I wanted to start here. Felt right. I knew that there were a couple things that I wanted to take into account here, his froggy demeanor being a big part of this design of the Pokemon, and I wanted it to feel very froggy. I also thought about how Mewtwo's lore and kind of the design premise behind the early inspiration of the character was that each of its fingers was meant to have a brain within it. And I thought, that's kind of cool. What if we take that same idea and apply it here? So I created this little frog with these big fingies and used that as like that same type of energy. As I went through, I thought, well, if these are aliens and the whole concept of the Omnitrix is that it's meant to capture DNA, in a Pokemon world, it kind of almost works like a Pokedex. And use that on top of the idea of a Pokeball being something that contains and holds these creatures and mix them together. I created this Pokedex, Pokeball, Omnitrix, Omniball, and thought it kind of works out in a lot of different ways, and played up that whole idea. So a lot of these Pokemon, aliens, whatever you choose to call them, have some connection to Pokemon that already exist. This one having some of those froggy motifs, as well as that Mewtwo-esque vibe to the hands like I mentioned a moment ago. And I think that it works out and really gave me a direction to go, not just with this design, but with the rest of them moving forward, all 10. So we start out with Graylian, a take on gray matter, gray aliens, and alien. It is the gray matter Pokemon and of course a pure psychic type. For the shiny, I went with that albedo type of look, giving it that opposite color scheme with that reddish instead of that green. And I wanted to emphasize the energy within those fingertips for that mental dexterity and making it glow. I think this is a ton of fun, and the color of this design, as well as the rest, ended up being what threw me most, given that the Ben 10 aliens have a limited color scheme, but I think this one really works. Moving on, I wanted to jump into one of my favorite designs of aliens and turn that into a Pokemon as well, and that was Stinkfly. I feel like Stinkfly got such a short end of the stick when it came to new looks and new designs when it came to the different series, and I wanted to touch base with the initial concept. I always loved the ugly aliens. It really emphasized the idea that these were not meant to be heroes, but are just what a little kid thinks a hero could look like. So I wanted to stick with that ugly, grotesque, very, very alien look, which is why I jumped on the original series designs. And I feel like Stinkbug really got the short end of the stick on that. With each design and each iteration, as we moved throughout the various series of Ben 10, he became much more hero-esque, with the reboot fully making him a bipedal, almost Power Ranger looking character. And I didn't like that. So with this design, I really wanted to jump into that bug idea. I wanted it to feel like it was a predatory insect. So I went with that idea of how it's able to shoot this goop out of its eyes. Something changed throughout the series evolution, and delved deeper into that. I thought, oh, what if its eyes were a crosshair and it used them to shoot that goop, and this was kind of its aiming mechanism. I also went with trying to figure out ways to fit the Omnitrix shaping in creative ways into the designs as they stand, and some worked, some didn't. Some I played with more often than others, but I feel like they kind of work in the aspects that I got them to, and are really a way of unifying these designs. The way that I see this type of story playing out is that this is a Pokeball that puts out 1 of 10 different aliens every time you use it, all as Pokemon, of course. But in that same idea, it's the same as Ben trying to call upon a very specific circumstance and getting a luck of the draw type of pick. I think it'd be a ton of fun to see a Pokemon that works in that same type of idea. But for the moment, this is Toxifly, the Stinkfly Pokemon. Of course, it is a pure bug type, and its shiny much more looks like those nanomech type particles that we see in the movie. I know that nanomech isn't any relation to Stinkfly, but I thought with that whole hive mentality, it works in a lot of areas. You'll also notice between this design and Graylien, they have the same stat total, that being 510, which is a fun little nod to the idea of Ben, and doing 1010, felt a little on the nose. Maybe Ben 10,000. Moving on to Ghost Freak, this one threw me. Absolutely threw me. Because looking at all the different ghost types that we have already, they are so varied in concept of what a ghost is. So I ended up just kind of sticking with the Ghost Freak look, more or less. I initially made it a little bit more cute, a little bit more like Banette, or a little bit more like Gengar, but eventually decided, no, I want this thing to feel like a threat. And much as the others inspired me in different ways, this design inspired me to go a lot more with that beefier and more hostile look. Moving away from designs like Jigglypuff or Chansey or Snom, or Pokemon that have this cute little round feature, into things more akin to Charcadet and Gallade and that type of look. They felt like warriors. In some ways, I go against what I said before and make them look more heroic. It's a weird balance, trying to bring in aliens, superheroes, Pokemon, and the various qualities that break up each of those looks. So I played around with a lot of these designs, and honestly, a lot of them took me more time than I'm willing to discuss, but they were fun. For fitting the Omnitrix type of look into this Pokemon, I put it straight on the chest, and I thought it's really the only place that I can think to put it on here. But with its location right there, I thought it almost looks like a weird alien ghost mouth. So as I was finishing up, I played with that shape a little bit more, and it gave me some freedom to exaggerate what this look would look like. It gave me that freedom, that opportunity, and I was really glad that I figured that out and played with that look a little bit more, because it made moving forward so much easier, and at the same time made what I was making feel so much more creative. So this is Frightrum. The name is a play on fright, tantrum, phantom, and a lot of things. The freak out Pokemon. It is a pure ghost type, and the shiny takes on that to scare type of look, where when he becomes his true form, he becomes more purpley with that weird, gross, upside down face. Zscare is definitely one of my top favorite villain designs. Don't at me about it. He's so scary and so cool and such a fun story that I wanted to incorporate it in some way. Moving on, we're gonna hop right into our next Pokemon, which is Forearms, one of the most anticipated Pokemon I think of this video, as well as how do you not just make this Machamp? Machamp and Forearms have a ton in common, from the ridgeline that separates the head into two halves, to the four arms, to being just a big fighter type character. There was a lot going on, and even looking at concepts of like Gigantamax Machamp, it just made it even closer, giving him pants, I guess. But I went with something very different. I thought, what if I break it from being a human body into more of this focal on the arms? I actually took some inspiration off this from Lilo and Stitch the series, the character Kix, if anyone remembers that show. And if you don't, go and check it out, because the movie's coming out soon and it'd be a fun little rewatch. But I thought of that character and how it utilizes four arms in a different way than what we've seen before. And I feel like it really works. It allows for this grappler type of look and makes it super intense, super just intimidating. And I liked that a lot. So I went through and I designed the shading and the color to it and the line work, all that whole setup. And in the end decided this doesn't feel fun enough. It doesn't feel creative enough. So I went back, and you'll see me do that here in just a moment. I finished shading, get the whole thing done, and luckily I'm working on separate layers, which, confession time, I don't often do because I'm a mess. But luckily this time I did, and I was able to go in and adjust the color layer without affecting the shading or the lines, and that made things a lot easier. I'm not gonna say I was smart to do that. I was lucky, because I'm often not smart enough to do that. But in this case, it really works, and I think art-wise and education-wise, it really gives a glimpse into the profit that you can get from making sure that your workspace is clean. Stepping down from my soapbox, this is definitely one of my favorite designs of this video. Forearms is not one of my favorite aliens. He's a little on the nose for being a cool alien, but this is definitely one of my favorite designs, and I think it really captures all of the inspirations that I was going for. So this is Quatrounce. Its name a reference to quattro, meaning four, and trounce, meaning to like beat up or be better than. It is a pure fighting type and is the four-armed Pokemon. The shiny is a deep cut for Ben 10 fans. It has often been kind of rumored and theorized that Forearms would get an ultimate alien form, and every time that came up, they made him blue. So I decided, why not? Apart from that, there's really no reason, other than that it looks really good and fits that sock throw type of look. So I'm pretty happy with it. Hi, sorry to interrupt. I just want to remind you about today's sponsor, which is me. I dropped 13 stickers on Redbubble, all different characters and brands and companies from our Costawas region, as well as our Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, our Godzilla video, all of your favorites and mine. 13 stickers now available on Redbubble, which is down in the description. Those come in a number of sizes and styles, including special holographic versions, which are insanely cool, perfect for water bottles or laptops. And I highly recommend checking them out. Like I said, that link's down in the description, so I'll let you get back to the video. Again, super sorry to interrupt, just had to let you know. So in the realm of really cool aliens, I couldn't forget Heat Blast. I feel like Heat Blast and Forearms were some of Ben's go-to aliens, because what 10-year-old doesn't want to wield fire or be the strongest guy in the room? So I had to hop on Heat Blast. Again, I'm gonna get some hate on this. not one of my favorite aliens. It felt just way too on the nose for being a cool alien, and they even gave him that cool voice of Tom from Toonami, so he had a lot going for him, and for me, I thought, I get it, I understand, it's a fire dude, very cool, moving on. But for this one, I wanted to take that into account and make it feel very cool, make it feel like it's the, pardon the pun, chillest guy in the room, despite being the hottest guy in the room. I want to re-record that. I'm just gonna keep moving along. I played with the shapes that I wanted to utilize for this guy most of all. Whereas the others I played with color or line or concept. This one was very much kind of looking at the stance, looking at the inspiration of the shapes that I was using. Did I want to go with something that felt very human, something that felt very akin to like a Gallade or a other humanoid type of Pokemon? I don't know. I decided to kind of meet in the middle, gave it these backwards legs, which for the life of me, I always thought Heat Blast had, but I guess he doesn't. So I went with those backwards legs, gave him those big fire arms, and simplified a lot of the shapes down. That was one of the key structures of this design, was simplifying a lot of those shapes. They're pretty simple as exist, but I wanted them to be broken down just a little bit more. I found that that's kind of one of the key points when taking these videos where I turn something else into a Pokemon. Do I need to make it a little bit more complicated in order for it to fit? Do I need to slim it down for it to fit? This one was a weird balance between the two. Because while I wanted to break up some of those shapes, I also wanted to give some context to the Pokemon itself, give it a personality all its own. I was also always very upset that Heat Blast didn't wear pants. I thought there was a really cool design opportunity there that wasn't taken, so I kind of gave this guy something akin to pants to almost fix what I saw wrong with the initial design. I give him pants whenever I draw Heat Blast, and you can find those on my personal portfolio, where I draw a lot of Ben 10 fan art. I don't post it to the channel, but it's there, it exists, and this is Hypyro. Hi being the Japanese word for fire, and Pyro being a Latin word for fire. It is the Heat Blaster Pokemon. Of course, it has to be a pure fire type, with the shiny referencing that time that Ben was sick while transforming, and his aliens got weird powers based on him being sick. So it has that greenish glow of Heat Blast having a cold while still being cool. And that greenish, minty, yellowy fire is just a really cool color. I'd look for any excuse to use it, even if it didn't make sense for the prompt. Moving along is a great way to start this next Pokemon. Moving along, we're gonna work into Accelerate. Accelerate was actually one of my favorite of the originals. It was so cool how it was like based on a raptor and like a bicyclist, with its head being shaped like a speed walker or bicyclist style helmet. Makes me think of Malcolm in the Middle when Hal gets really into speed walking. He wears a helmet just like that, and I thought that was really cool. So I decided to make this full raptor, and I'm really happy that I did, because this ends up being another one of my favorite designs of the video. Let me know what you guys think. Which of these designs is your favorite now that I think about it? If you could only capture one of these Pokemon, which would it be? Obviously for the story, you capture all 10, but it's really not up to you which one you get to use at any particular moment. Like I was saying before, I think that'd be a really fun concept for Pokemon to take into account. What if you had this really powerful Pokemon, but you were not in control of which typing that it got, what its stats were gonna be? Is that a risk that you would take? I don't know. I'm not a hyper competitive Pokemon player, but I feel like it's just a cool enough gimmick that I would keep it on my team just to see what I get, hoping for my favorites every single time. And this guy is definitely one of those favorites that I'd be hoping for. I went ahead and built in that helmet type look. I played around a little bit seeing if I wanted to or if I wanted to make it just the head shape, but I felt like making it just the head shape and making it all blue pulled away from the prompt of it being kind of inspired by Accelerate. Accelerate's not one of my favorite designs, but he was my favorite alien, I'll say. I went ahead and made it an electric type, which you'll see later, and that ended up being a whole kerfuffle because it didn't look like an electric type. So there will be some changes between the reveal and the drawing process, because It was a whole mess. I ended up kind of getting lost and just making something really, really cool, and then deciding last minute, oh right, I wrote down that this was going to be an electric type, and going back making some subtle changes. Blue works, I think, for electricity, but I needed it to be just a little bit more seen. I didn't want to get in that whole Luxray isn't dark type argument. So, with all that aside, this is Velocirate. Velociraptor, Velocity, and Accelerate. It is the acceleration Pokemon and is a pure electric type. For the shiny, I went with just a little bit more of that green hint because obviously Accelerate is not just blue, he's a greenish blue, but I wanted to go with a more electric blue for the color scheme, so the shiny gave me an opportunity to sneak in some more of those colors that work from the initial prompt, and I'm pretty happy about it. I love that black and white tail that he doesn't have in the original concept, but was able to bring in here to get more of those color variations. Up next, we have Diamond Head. Each of these aliens was an experiment in drawing and designing and basing stuff off of other stuff. I don't know if they're particularly difficult because that's just the base model of building them, or because I'm such a fan of both of these franchises that I wanted to get it right. And Diamond Head is one that I didn't feel hyper confident about, but I'm hoping that it works out in a couple different ways. I wanted to bring in more of that inspiration from other Pokemon that are around, being that this is a DNA catalog type of system, and so used Gigalith as an inspiration for that. I'm working on a project coming out soon, and Gigalith has kind of been on my mind, so I wanted to bring that in here. I don't know, it feels very much like that, very much like Duraludon, and I feel like being that it fits right in the middle of those two really adds to that whole, it's a combination of DNA sequences from Pokemon and alien artifacts. I think it works in some facets, some ways, and I wanted to change up the body shape. I didn't want this to be another humanoid Pokemon, so using Gigalith and Duraludon as the examples for that, I think were really good choices. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think, but for this one, I really went off the rails and decided I'm gonna do something different. I then went into something that I learned from Rex in a collab that we did recently for a Porico experiment stuff with Plubcoal and Fedorex, and I noticed that when he did this crystalline structure, the way that he did it was by breaking up the shapes in this way. So I utilized the example that I learned from him to try and create a texture to this Pokemon. And I'll put it out there, I'll put it plainly, I am not as talented on this side of texturing as Fedorex is, so bear with me, but I think it works out. I think it creates this fun type of look, this fun type of sheen, and this fun type of texture to this design that I really enjoy. I know Fedorex would have done a much better job, and I full-heartedly believe that, so you know, let him know if you're watching this and you're like, wow, that does sound really cool. And Stern did fully screw up. Let me see what it should look like. That is in our collab video, and it's also stuff all over his channel. So this is Zirconium, a play on zirconium, cubic zirconium being fake diamonds, and column, because look at him. He is the diamond-headed Pokemon, a pure rock type, and the shiny brings in some of that pinkish color a little bit more to go with that Chromastome type of tie-in that we have with Diamond Head and Chromastone, him being a god to the Diamond Head people. So I went ahead with that for the shiny, and I really like it. Feels very rock candy, and I wanted it to be very grounded because Diamond Head's whole thing is he shoots diamonds but can also launch them out of the ground. So that's that whole deal. This Pokemon is, man, I don't know where to start. When I first took on this challenge, I actually drew Wildmutt first, and I finished it completely, and I ended up not liking it, thinking it doesn't look enough like Pokemon, he looked too smooth, and so I decided to draw it again. I went and took a break, drew 3 or 4 other aliens, drew Wildmutt again, and I also didn't like that one. Fully finished that one, threw it away. And so I waited another 2 or 3 Pokemon and then drew it again. And that's actually the one that you're seeing here. So all the sketches and things that you see of me trying to figure out how to design this Pokemon, understand that those are the sketches for this version. I also did like 2 or 3 other versions that I ended up cutting because there was just something about them that I didn't like. It was that I had gotten so entrenched in the idea that a lot of these designs needed to be slimmed down that I had like forgotten how to add to. And Wild Mutt is such a simplistic and fun and cool concept that I had like forgotten how to add to it. But it needed adding to. He big orange dog, and we love him for it. So I went with adding more mole-like features to really tie into that echolocation type of thing that he has. I know that it's all scent-based, but I don't know what the term for seeing things by smell is. I'm sure there is one. I know snakes do it. Let me know what that is, because I would love to be educated on the matter. But yeah, this one was a handful. It was definitely something that I played with, definitely something that I worked on and off. And I will say, if I can give you a little tip for drawing, giving yourself a day or two to rest and come back to the design helps tremendously. So this is Mollymutt, a play on mole and mutt, the wild mutt Pokemon. It is a pure ground type, and for the shiny, I went with more of that Vulpamancer type of color, which is what wild mutts become when they get older. So weird and so cool how they change so drastically in their age cycle. So I wanted to incorporate some of that reddish color into the shiny, and I know it's not super prevalent, but you know how much that I love my subtle shinies, so I went with that. For the size, I also wanted to make it big enough to ride, because that ends up being a whole thing with his with that alien. Upgrade was another one who was an absolute favorite of mine in the show. I don't think he got enough spotlight for how cool of an alien this is. In fact, it's not even an alien. It is an experiment built by the Galvans, not even its own fully like developed creature. It was built. It's a robot. It is a living metal, which is a problem because we already have a living metal Pokemon with Meltan and Melmetal. So I went through a couple different iterations of how I wanted to handle this. I knew roughly what I wanted to do with the body, but the head was throwing me. I didn't know. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to do just a big gloopy head like Upgrade has. Just like Wild Mutt, it felt too simplified. I wanted to do something a little bit more with the idea, but didn't know what more I wanted to do. I thought about the idea of galvanized metal and how liquid iron will actually like reach out like a living thing when metal comes near it, specifically magnetized metal or metal that has magnetic properties to it, like iron. And I wanted to bring that into play. I thought that would be really cool. I thought that would really add a new layer of liquidation to this fully metal Pokemon, which is almost exactly what I wanted. I wanted something that broke up the shapes a little bit better, and also didn't take away from one of my favorite aliens. That often ends up being the biggest issue that I have with these challenges is how do I make something that I already really love the design of and apply it to something new? It almost feels like that Twitter trend of I'm gonna fix your art, which was terrible to do to artists and just people in general. And I don't ever want that to feel like the case with these challenges, like I'm fixing someone's art. So that's why I'm making it blatantly clear. A lot of the time, the problem is I love the design so much that I don't see any way to change it that I'm as happy with as the actual design. But I think that Alloy worked really well. Alloy, the upgrade Pokemon, a pure steel type. Try saying that name 10 times fast and let me know how you do. Alloy. For the shiny, I went with the purple color that we get in the reboot Ben 10, which I do not like. I want to make that clear. I keep bringing it up. I don't like that show, but that purple color just kind of adds a new dimension to Upgrade. So it was fodder for becoming a shiny, I think. I'm disappointed in myself. You can be too. Let me know if you think the reboot's better. I'll fight you. Coming up next, we have Ripjaws, the last of our original 10 aliens for this video, and fish. That's all I gotta say. Fish. I wanted to draw fish. I don't like drawing fish, but I had to. I didn't want to go human route, and this really gives a lot of opportunity to not go the human route. So I had to do that. It's obviously based on an anglerfish, so I wanted to do that. I wanted to jump into that type of energy for it. But man, do I not like drawing fish. Man, do I not like drawing fish. I can't say it enough. So I went in and I thought, well, let's try and make it something fun, something exciting. Like, I have a lot of favorite aliens. Ripjaws is definitely up there, and he very, very much gets screwed over in some of the other series of the show. So I wanted to do him just a little bit of justice here, just make it work in a couple different ways, and unfortunately, it is a type of Pokemon that is not one of my favorites. But regardless, I have to say I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it has a dynamic pose and still allows me to integrate that Omnitrix shape into the design that I'm pretty proud of, I have to say. If you can't be proud of your own artwork, then find a way to be. It's really fun and really rewarding when you can draw something that you weren't super confident about and say, oh wow, this actually came out better than I expected. And for me, that was this Pokemon. It came out better than I expected because I didn't expect a lot, because I don't like drawing fish. Can't say it enough. Don't know why. Also don't know why I built a whole region around the coast, with the aquarium being a big inspiration on that, but I don't like drawing fish. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm pretty proud of how I was able to orchestrate it, and you saw at the beginning, I went through a couple different iterations of how I wanted to handle this, and it was an experiment the entire way through. Something that I could say that I was happy with while still being represented by a creature that I do not like drawing. And I'm happy with it. I really, really like this. Probably one of my favorites of the video. So this is Ichthresh, from Ichthus for fish and Thresh for threshing about in the water. It is the Ripjaw Pokemon, is a pure water type, and for the shiny, I just went ahead and made it blue. I have no good reasoning. It's a fish, so it's blue. I'm sure that someone will come up with a better reason, a better way, but for the moment, this is who it is, and I'm dang happy about it. If you were to acquire this mysterious Pokeball with an unknown Pokemon inside, who would you be hoping for? Which of these designs was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, join our Discord. We have a really fun community that just recently passed 1,000 members, and we have a contest going on right now. It's a challenge where I'm doing an advent calendar, a different prompt every day that comes with an exclusive video to the Discord only. And I'm gonna pick my favorites, and on our Monday videos, I show off some of my favorites from those prompts. It's super fun, and I've got some big announcements that are coming for the new year, so you're gonna wanna be on Discord to get those first. But I also wanna give a shout out to all the people who help make this possible, who support my streams, who support my videos, and support everything going on here. Especially a shout out to Teacup Cryptid, who is of our master tier list over on the Patreon. Thank you guys so much. I think you know where to find me. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.